And then we post these videos up on our website afterwards for people that are interested. So let me call the meeting to order. We may have some others join us. It's 6:34 p.m. May 13th, New York Coalition for Open Government. Before I get started, I know that we have at least one new person joining us, two actually, one who's a guest speaker, but one new person joining us, and that's Brad Racino. So let me have Brad introduce himself and tell us a little bit about him and what part of the state you're from.
Sure. Hi, everybody. And thanks for having me, Paul. Yeah, my name is Brad Racino. I grew up in Orange County, New York, but about 10 years ago, my wife and I moved to San Diego. And for the past 10 years, I've been the assistant director and senior investigative reporter for an investigative nonprofit out there called iNewsSource. We started really small. There were 3 of us when I joined. When I left last month, we built it up to 17. And it's really doing some kick-ass journalism. And in the process, I got to know the First Amendment Coalition out there and David Snyder, the leader there, and started getting really interested in, obviously open government as an investigative reporter, but trying to get more involved. And then my wife and I made the jump about a month ago to come back to New York. We're up in Syracuse right now, where her family is from. And I'm just kind of getting my feet wet back into the world of New York journalism, and reached out to Paul as soon as I got here, and he invited me. So just wanted to say hi and see what you guys are working on and see if there's anything that I can do to help, no matter what it is. I'm pretty good at a bunch of things. I'm not so good at some other things, but if there's anything I can do to help this mission, I believe very strongly in open government and freedom of information. So that's what I'm here for.
Great, welcome. Glad that you reached out. So first item on our agenda, and hopefully everybody received it, is to look at the meeting minutes. So we typically meet the second Thursday of the month at 6:30 p.m. Lately that's been through Zoom. And so first order of business is to deal with the meeting minutes. Hopefully people have had a chance to look at them. Anyone want to make a motion regarding the minutes? You can unmute yourself to make a motion, that's fine.
Okay, Paul, I'll make a motion.
All right, so
Maria, I'll make a motion to accept the minutes as read.
We got a motion from Maria and a second from Larry. Any questions on the minutes? All those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Aye.
Aye.
Then we have our treasurer's report. So great news on this month's treasurer report. Now that we are able to accept membership fees online, we've really seen an incredible boost in money coming into the account and members who've joined. So I'll turn it over to Janet for our treasurer's report.
Good evening, everyone. Good to see everybody. Brad, welcome to our group. You're going to be a great addition. Appreciate all your incentives to want to work with us.
Thanks.
Thank you very much. Our treasurer's report, as Paul said, to date, this has brought in 23 online memberships, which is absolutely wonderful. And we have as of today, we have 39 members in our group, and that's a great accomplishment because we've have been trying, and I think the outreach through the internet and through the online, Paul's efforts have just been outstanding, and everyone's membership is really appreciated, and we're glad to have everybody aboard. So we have a balance in our account. In March, we started out with $1,367.92. And as of May 6th, we have $1,129.92. So we're growing. It's going to be put to good use. Thank everybody.
Janet, would you repeat that amount again? 1,000?
You mean the balance as of May 6th?
Yes.
The balance as of May 6th is $2,129.92.
Wow. Big jump.
Yeah, I think that's the most we've had, and every time I send out an email, I put that link in there. A few other people seem to click on it and send money.
Wonderful.
Any questions on the treasurer's report?
I just
Good
had a
job,
question. Just where are the members coming from? Gratefully.
Well, and that's one of the things I was.
What area are they coming from?
That was one of the things I was going to point out is we started this group as the Buffalo Niagara Coalition for Open Government. So we had members from Erie County and Niagara County. And a year ago, we expanded to be statewide. So right now we have 39 members, as Janet said. And by my count, 13 of them are from different counties across the state. We have 13 different counties now. There's 62 counties in New York. So certainly the goal is to get somebody from every one of those counties. But right now we have people from 13 different counties. They seem to be clustered, quite a few around the Albany area, but really scattered across the state. Our Facebook membership has also grown. Last I looked, we were up to like 340 Facebook members, and those are from all across the state as well. So that's good.
Well, thank you for your leadership in directing that. Thank you so much.
Thank
That's
you.
right, Paul. Thank you.
Any other questions on the treasurer's report? If not, if someone wants to make a motion. You're all shy about motions tonight.
I'll make the
Okay.
motion, Paul.
All right, Joe Kissel makes a motion. Is there a second?
And I'll second the motion.
Second by Sonia. All those in favor of approving the treasurer's report, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. So next item is number 3 on our agenda. One of the things that we did this year was reach out to state legislators seeking to get someone to pick up the cause to amend the open meetings law. The open meetings law in New York, in our opinion, is very weak. I mean, it's amazing what the law does not require. The law does not require that you have to post meeting minutes online. It does not require that people be allowed to speak at meetings. As far as posting meeting documents, it says that should be done as best as practicable, whatever that means. It doesn't mandate it. So we've been sending out emails to state legislators pointing some of these things out, and for the most part, we heard nothing but crickets and got no response back. But legislator Amy Paulin expressed interest in introducing some legislation. So on the meeting agenda, there are 2 bills that she's introduced that we've been focusing on. One requires the posting of meeting minutes within 2 weeks of a meeting. Right now, the law says you just have to make the minutes available if someone asks for them within 2 weeks. Other states actually require you to post it. Vermont, you're required to do it within 5 days of a meeting. So the strange world of Albany, we get the legislator and a senator to introduce this bill. Great idea, pretty simple, just to mandate that meeting minutes be posted online. Well, now that bill has been amended in a strange way, and now we're actually actively opposing the bill that we requested to be introduced. So as we talked about this at the last meeting, the bill has now been amended at the request of some attorneys in the legislature that review these things to say that instead of posting meeting minutes, a local government could post a meeting video or audio or video recording in lieu of meeting minutes. And our position is, well, why can't we do both? Why can't we post meeting minutes and a video or audio recording of a meeting? Why does it have to be one or the other? And furthermore, I really think there should be a written record of motions and votes and attendance. It's kind of hard to, some of these meetings go for 2 hours. It's kind of hard to scroll through a meeting video to find exactly what you're looking for. Whereas meeting minutes are just, 5-6 pages long, and you can pretty quickly get up to speed on what happened. So the bill's been amended, and the state assembly has passed the bill, the version that we don't like. It passed May 4th. It hasn't passed the Senate yet. We sent out a memo email to all the state legislators letting them know. Unfortunately, we couldn't get it out until the day after. I didn't realize it was coming up for a vote. So the day after it passed in the assembly, our memo went out, but hopefully we can put the brakes on it in the state Senate, and somebody, says maybe this isn't a good idea after all, but we'll have to see. So that's one piece of legislation. The other piece that's more promising is Paulin and Senator Kaplan have introduced a bill to mandate that meeting documents be posted online 24 hours before a meeting occurs. I would have preferred 48 hours or 72 hours, but okay, 24 hours before a meeting occurs. Right now, the law is as best as practicable. There have been court decisions that say posting meeting documents an hour before a meeting is sufficient because the law doesn't mandate anything other than as best as you can. So this would be at least a step forward to mandate that at least 24 hours before a meeting, documents should be put online. That has passed the Assembly on May 4th, and hopefully the Senate will pass it. My understanding is the session is supposed to end June 10th, so all legislation is going to kind of be done in the next month. So hopefully it moves forward. I saw Sonia had your hand up.
Yeah, correct me if I'm wrong. I recall, maybe I'm mistaken, years ago, you had to give 72-hour notice if there was like a meeting, and 5 days after the meeting, let the people know what the minutes are. Has that changed, or am I just incorrect from what I thought?
Well, you are correct that there has to be notice, 72 hours before. It depends on how far in advance a meeting is scheduled, but at least 72 hours notice has to be given for a meeting. But as far as I know, it's always been the minutes just have to be available within 2 weeks of a meeting.
And not five days after the meeting?
No.
We seem to be going backwards. And I was thinking about, like, this bill coming up, it would be wonderful if we had the resources, the machine to put a petition out, letting the public know this is what's currently being coming before the legislature for their vote, and we favor such and such. If you agree with us, send your petition or your notice or sign this petition. I'm thinking of that just because we're over, it's what we're trying to do. We need more people knowing about what's happening and get their support.
Yeah, and I've been trying to work with some other groups as well, and we'll hear from Tom Speaker for Reinvent Albany. They've been supportive, and they have influence and more experience than we do in influencing legislation in Albany. We're learning the ropes here, and like I say, the strange world of Albany, that a bill we introduced turns into something that completely guts what we were trying to do. We are now opposing.
Really?
But any other questions on the 2 pieces of legislation pending in Albany?
I had a question.
Sure.
Is there like a voting record, Paul, that shows who said yay or nay, so that you could look and see if it was one of your?
There is. You can go on the Assembly website, and one of the projects I think we're going to talk about maybe next year is I think maybe doing some type of open government report card where we rate how legislators, they're all up for re-election next year. So next year is the year to do it. But rate, pick 9 or 10 bills, and there's a couple in the legislature that are good bills, and issue some type of report card that points out who's really voting for open government and who's not. So that's something we can talk about for next year. But you can go on the websites of the legislature are pretty good. The Assembly and the Senate, they have their own websites, and there's a lot of information on there about the bill memos, the bill text, where it is in the process, who voted for it. Their websites are pretty good. Anything else?
Thank you.
Yeah, Paul,
Go ahead.
did anyone actually vote against it or speak out against the amendments?
Well, the way the amendments happened was the bill gets introduced, and I'm new to this, but from my understanding is the attorneys in the legislature review it. The Assembly has their attorneys, the Senate has their attorneys, and they're called the Program Counsel's Office. And the Program Counsel's Office basically tells you, look, if you want to move this bill forward, this is what you have to do. And I don't know why, it was a strange amendment to me to make, but their attorney said to legislator Paulin, you want to move this forward, you got to put this amendment in. And what annoyed me was she agreed to it the same day. She didn't even shoot an email to me and say, hey, what do you think of this? And the same thing with Senator Franis for that matter, or Senator Kaplan for that matter. So it just got quickly amended. And Paulin's view of legislation is, hey, you have to make compromises, and getting something passed is better than getting nothing passed. Well, I don't know if that's always true. I think sometimes it's a mistake to pass something. But she has a different philosophy. Her philosophy is, and she gets a lot of bills passed, whatever it takes to get it done, I'm going to get it done, and you don't always get everything you want.
So that's the way it works in the politics. Do for me this time, I'll do for you next time. And that's why I think a lot of good people in Washington or Albany, they leave, because this kind of nonsense is unacceptable. Be your own person.
I think part of the argument is, well, this is kind of burdensome there's a lot of small towns and villages, and to make them post the minutes is another thing to do, and everybody's short-staffed. I don't know. I don't think it's that hard to post meeting minutes, truthfully.
That's right.
I think that's an overblown excuse. And the thought was, well, instead of doing meeting minutes, why not just post an actual recording, which is probably better than a summary of the minutes? Well, I don't know. I disagree. And I think, if anything, probably posting a recording is more burdensome than posting the meeting minutes, but I'd like to see us do both as opposed to one or the other. But I think, Joe, you may have been asking too, is there, I don't know who voted for or against the bill. I didn't check, but I can look on the Assembly website.
So basically, they weren't really aware that a change had been made, and they weren't aware of the process.
No, they weren't. And I was going to reach out sooner. The bill was in committee, and I don't know, I didn't expect it to move so quickly. Some people said, well, if you reach out to them while it's in committee, they're not even going to know what you're talking about. It hasn't even reached their desks yet. But in hindsight, maybe I should have sent it out anyways. But we'll see.
Well, it's a learning process.
And Legislator Paulin also said to me, well, I hear your concerns. We can always fix it after the fact. Well, I don't know how that works, but we'll see.
So Paul, just a couple of things on that.
Sure. Tom Speaker is from Reinvent Albany.
Yeah, hi, I'm Tom. I work at Reinvent Albany. We do some work on open government. I'll tell you more about our organization later, but so yeah, the bill was passed unanimously by both parties. There was no opposition in the Assembly. So there's that. I mean, most of them probably just did not get any kind of communication in opposition to it. And And even if they had, they get a lot of emails, so it can be hard to get their attention sometimes. The other thing is that the assembly can recall bills, and they do sometimes if after the passage of a bill, the legislator has second thoughts and wants to make another amendment. And that happens a lot, we've been told. So.
Okay, so I mean, there is still possibility to maybe fix it. We'll see. Anything else on that, or we'll move on to the next item? So item number 4 is our next report to come out is on planning board. So we try to do 3 or 4 reports a year. We did a report a month or 2 ago on villages and their posting of meeting minutes and things of that nature. This report is on planning boards and whether they're posting meeting documents online before their meeting occurs. Again, the law in New York is, as best as practical, if you have a website, you should post meeting documents online. And my argument is, if you have a website, there's no practical reason why you shouldn't be posting documents. So we took a look at planning board meetings in March, and we always pick like 20 to look at. So we looked at 20 town board planning boards across the state. So the report, I have a draft of it done. I could shoot it out to the board members to look at. Hopefully next week we can do a press conference to release it. But what we found was, and we never know what we're going to find when we do these things, but usually it's not good news. And what we found is only 25%, 5 of the 20 we looked at, are posting their meeting documents online before their meeting. So
Paul, is this towns, cities, and villages?
just town planning boards.
Just town?
Yeah.
How come not including cities?
Well, because we try to focus our reports. We did one report on school boards, one report on villages. This one is on towns. The next one we're going to do is on counties. So that's how we've been kind of doing it.
And that's maybe because of the legislation. There's a slight difference when it's a town or city.
No, the law still requires you to post meeting documents either
Right.
way.
Yep.
So that report kind of ties in with, the legislation that's passed in Albany by Paulin to mandate that you got to post documents 24 hours before. If anything, maybe the release of this report will give some more publicity to that cause, and the Senate still has to vote on that legislation. So we'll see about setting a date for sometime next week to release that report. We usually do it by Zoom, invite reporters from across the state, and we've been pretty good about getting coverage for our reports. So that takes us to number 5. And the next report we're going to do after this is on counties. And I thought about maybe focusing on Board of Elections. There's a lot of stuff going on right now on voting rights, lots of coalitions and groups working on voting rights issues. And each county has a Board of Elections. And I took a quick look at their websites, and they're pretty bad. Most county Board of Elections aren't posting much. So that might be a timely report to do as far as counties go. So we'll start working on that. Any questions on the planning board report or county report coming up?
I just have a basic question.
Would
All
we
right,
be doing,
Go ahead, Brad.
I'm sorry, just a quick question. How does this work when you guys work on reports or you're doing this research? Like, who is doing it? Is it divided up among the board, or are you taking it all on?
So what we've kind of have a format or a template that we've set up. We've done a couple of these reports now, and we do different ways of grading them. Sometimes we do reports where we'll look at 4 different things, depending on how ambitious we are, I guess. So one report we did is, are you posting meeting minutes? Are you posting meeting documents? Are people being allowed to speak at your meetings? Because believe it or not every place does. So we pick different things to focus on, and we typically go, it's all just done online. We go to their websites and take a look at, what's there. Is it there or not there? So lately what we've been doing is I kind of do an initial go through of what I found, and then I divide up, give everybody else that's interested 2 or 3 to look at and say, hey, did you see what I saw? And it's good because people will point out, I think you missed this, or vice versa. So I try to have 2 or 3 people look at each website, and then we kind of gather all the stuff that we find and put it together in a report. The painful part is whenever we release these reports, we always get pushback. The grading part is the trickiest part. So we've done things where we give you an A, B, C, or D, and I get pushback. Oh, you gave us a B, but we should have been an A. And it's exhausting after the reports are released. This report for planning boards, I said, you know what, I'm going to simplify this. We're just going to do one thing, and that's going to be, are they posting meeting documents or not? And it's pass fail. If you posted the meeting documents, you passed. If you didn't post it, you failed. Because I spend so much time afterwards fighting with people, which in some ways is good. Some people, they want a good score, and great, well, fix it. And I'm always happy to do a press release, a press conference, patting you on the back, highlighting that you fixed it. So we kept it simple this time, pass fail, but we certainly always looking for additional hands to help look at these things. Sonia.
You said something where I wanted to ask you, Paul, were you just looking to see that they gave the minutes, or did you actually read some of them and see if when they made their decision, they said what they approve or oppose or whatever they're doing, and give the reasoning behind it? And I asked that because I remember quite a few years ago, New York State, the Attorney General, he specifically had one of those executive pronouncements that a planning board, you don't just say we're for or we're against. In making your decision, you show why you gave this or why you did not. And that's very important. What I have seen locally, we do not do that at all. We just go through the 1 through 5 reasons to give or not give, and that's all they do. That is not acceptable. And I'm just wondering if you read them at all?
No, I didn't look at their documents. I just looked to see whether they posted them or not.
Got it.
So
I think, well, maybe at a later date, I think that's something to consider doing, because that's very, very telling on a planning board.
All right, so let's go to our next item, which is our guest speaker, whose last name is Speaker, Tom Speaker, Reinvent Albany. Some of you are probably aware of. If you haven't been to their website, I really encourage you to check them out. Basically, in New York State, as far as open government goes, Reinvent Albany and the New York Coalition for Open Government are the 2 groups primarily focusing on open government issues. There are other groups that touch on it, but we seem to be the 2 main groups that are focused solely on it. And it's kind of just worked out that Reinvent Albany focuses a lot on the Freedom of Information Law, and we focus a little bit more on the open meetings law. I mean, we both do open meetings law and FOIL, but it kind of seems we lean towards open meetings law and they lean towards FOIL. So it's kind of been working out good that we complement our efforts. And we've done some joint letters together on different issues and working together on some of these bills. So I'll turn it over to Tom to tell us a little bit about Reinvent Albany and some of the stuff they're working on.
Hey everyone, so again, I'm Tom. I'm from Reinvent Albany. I'm a policy analyst there. As Paul pointed out, we work, yes, in the issues of transparency, but we do some work on elections and campaign finance reform as well. We also look at some of the state's business tax incentives that are given out and whether or not there's anything shady going on there, which there often is. We also do some work on the MTA down here in New York City and the surrounding area, and encouraging reform of that. So I do appreciate the opportunity to be here today. So Paul had actually reached out and mentioned the database of deals, which has been our main project that we've been pushing recently. You may have heard about it, but if not, I'll run through what we've been working on there. So a database of deals is a database that would be set up by the states that would track all of the economic development spending that happens, showing how much New York is giving out to businesses in exchange for the creation of jobs or the building of infrastructure. And it would tell us how much each business is receiving and whether or not any jobs are being created, what areas those are in, whether they're creating full-time jobs, part-time jobs, all that type of fun stuff. Florida has a database like this. Texas has a database like this. I think Wisconsin used to, until it was taken down by the previous gubernatorial administration up there. New York City also has one. So every year, New York State spends $4.4 billion on economic development programs that usually come in the form of grants or tax breaks to businesses. And 4.4 billion is about the size of the budget of the state of Delaware, or how much it costs to build the Tappan Zee Bridge. So it's quite a lot. Unfortunately, we don't really know in many cases which businesses are receiving that money, and we don't know whether or not they are creating jobs. That information is often spread out across many sources. You have to go and look at the comptroller's websites, or you have to dig through Empire State Development's many documents on their programs. Empire State Development, in case you're not aware, is the state's chief economic development arm. So we've been pushing for a database that would allow all that information to be available in one place. This push has been happening from many organizations, including us, since about 2015. And that was about the time that people were starting to look into the Buffalo Billion program, which I'm sure most of you are familiar with, and noticing that there weren't many jobs being created through that. And of course, there were the Buffalo Billion scandals that came out of bid rigging that went on with the SUNY Research Foundation and several large corporations up in Buffalo and Syracuse. So we started the push back in 2015. In 2017, both the Senate and the Assembly introduced legislation in their budgets that would create a database of deals. The governor pushed back, unfortunately, and in that budget year, there was not any database legislation that was established. Same thing happened in 2018. Even after all these charges were filed against Cuomo officials and allies and donors. And then we got to 2019, and what happened there was the governor agreed to have Empire State Development create a database as long as that database would not be established in law. So
Not codified, not codified, you mean?
Not codified, yes.
And that's important.
It is important. So it was really just up to Empire State Development to create it and decide what went in there. And they allocated $500,000 for this database to get built. So 2019 came and went, and there was no database. In 2020, Empire State Development President Eric Gertler testified that the database would be done by the end of the year. The end of 2020 came and went without a database. Of course, they pointed to COVID-19, other budget issues like that, which is maybe true. We don't really know, as a reason why the database didn't get built. This year, President Eric Gertler said again that it would be done in a matter of weeks. This was back in February. matter of weeks turned into a matter of months, and there was still no database. And then finally on May 6th, this was last week, Empire State Development released its database, and it fell very short, unsurprisingly, of what we had hoped for. It has not come anywhere close to being true transparency, where taxpayers can actually see where their money is going. There's a lot of things that are missing. For one, it only includes projects from 2018 and onward. Projects started in 2018 and onward. And of course, there's lots of like billions and billions of dollars in projects that were started, you know, a decade ago or even further back that New York State is still spending a lot of money on. So it's missing a lot. As I said, the state spends $4.4 billion a year. That database that was released only includes $852 million in spending spread out over 3 years, which averages out to $284 million a year. That's 6% of how much New York State spends every year on economic development. It doesn't give us a sense of what local governments are spending. Local governments on the whole spend $5.5 billion altogether on economic development spending. These are all estimates. We don't know the exact numbers, but this is what the Citizens Budget Commission, which is another good organization that works on these issues, has estimated. So in the database that was released, they just count local government investments and private investments together, which of course doesn't make any sense because it's private investor money versus taxpayer money. The other thing is that the database does not divide out what types of jobs are being created through these programs. So there's many types of jobs that could be created: contract jobs, full-time jobs, part-time jobs, permanent jobs. But under this database, a 5-year full-time job is counted in the same way as a 3-month temporary part-time job. So we can't really get a sense of how much money the state is spending to create each individual job, or job per year, as economists tend to count it. So of course, the next step is going to be to try and get the legislature to pass legislation that would establish this database. There are already bills, and they're pretty good ones, that would improve, you know, the piece of crap that we've been given, basically. So that's what we're going to be focusing our efforts on. I think since the governor is in a weaker position due to the countless scandals that are going on, it could make it more likely to get that through. We'll just have to see. It could take a year. We don't really know. Since the database was released toward the end of the legislative session, which ends June 10th, there might not be enough time to get legislation through this year, but we'll just have to go through it to next year. But that's where we're at right now, and that's what we're working on. I'm happy to take any questions that you might have.
Any questions? Maria?
I just have a question, Tom. I don't know if maybe you presented it, but who actually authors these bills? Is it the Empire State Development, and then it goes to legislature, and then it goes to the governor? Is that the process? For how much
you mean the
money
bill
to
that would
spend?
establish a database of deals?
Right.
Yeah, so those are usually written by either advocates or the staff working in the legislature. So when the bills that are in the legislature right now were developed, that was part of a long negotiation process that started in 2016 and went through 2017, where I wasn't at Reinvent Albany at this time, but Reinvent Albany and Citizens Budget Commission and the Senate Republicans and the Assembly Democrats at the time, because the Senate Republicans were the ones who were in the majority. We were all negotiating for a long time on what to put into these bills, and that's how they got written, basically.
Okay, and then
So
you
what
mentioned that
what legislators introduced it right now?
So there's two different bills. There's the Assembly legislation and the Senate legislation. They're very similar, but the Assembly legislation is more expansive. That's the one that we prefer. It's not really worth going into why, But anyway, Senator Comrie, Leroy Comrie is a senator in Queens. He's been in the Senate for quite a while. He has the bill in the Senate, and Assemblymember Schimminger, who's upstate, he's now retired, but he had the bill in the Assembly. It has not yet been reintroduced.
So is this bill, Tom, then does it also, like you mentioned that $284 million per year is expended by the state, and out of this 5.5 million goes to the local government? Is there a mechanism where the local government has a list of how they've used their 5.5 billion, or do they just rely on the controller records from Albany?
Yeah, so just to clarify, that 5.5 billion is not included in the database that was released.
Okay.
So that 284 million is just what the state has spent since 2018 on programs that have been started since 2018. So for local government spending, if you want to, for economic development anyway, if you want to get more information about that, the best place to go is the comptroller's website, and I can drop a link into the chat on where that information is.
Good.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Sonia.
Glad you're here, Tom. And some comments. And I'm surprised to hear this, because how do you have checks and balances if you don't have any records of what you're spending, where it's coming in? I've said to my municipality a while ago, a lot of money is being, for example, the grants are coming. And I said, are you keeping a record of the grants you have? And ask each mom and pop shop business that are getting these grants, or when you're putting money into the downtown section, what is the expense you are charging, and what's the revenue coming in? And they don't do it, my understanding. And this is befuddling, because this is just basic checking the jelly beans. It floors me that this is totally incompetency. And maybe this isn't the right term, but I'm thinking it's a shell game. You don't know where the thing is underneath the shells. This is really totally so unacceptable. Thank you, Tom, for doing what you're doing. It must be frustrating. And I think if people were to hear what you've said, they would say, what? I've got to account for things. Why isn't the state accounting for our taxpayer dollars and money they get from the federal government? We need to have this topic exposed and let people know what's happening, let people think about it. And I'm sure they would not like this.
Well, Tom, that's a kudos for you.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
A big kudos.
Looks like Brad has a question.
Yeah, Tom, I just downloaded this data as you were speaking, and it's definitely wanting for a number of different things. But aside from the Newsday story that you shared, have any other organizations done any substantive analysis of this data? I know it's relatively new, but has anyone done a deep dive on kind of what it shows and anything like that you're aware of?
You mean on the data that was just released?
Yeah.
Well, not yet. It's we have looked through it. It really seems to show that for the most part, these programs haven't really delivered much on investment. In all fairness, because it only records programs that started in 2018, and these programs can go on for many, many years. With what we've been given, it really is hard to tell whether or not we're getting a return on investment. Something we do know, and which I forgot to mention, is that most studies have shown that these types of economic development programs are not very effective at creating jobs. There was one study done by a well-known scholar named Tim Bartik at the Upjohn Institute that found that these types of economic development programs only affect where businesses decide to locate 2 to 25% of the time, which is not very great. And that's something that has come up again and again in research, just across the political spectrum, really. So, I mean, I expect that if we ever do get a clearer look at the data and can look back to programs that started 10 or 20 years ago, we'd find some of the same thing. We know this from programs that have started under Buffalo Billion or some of the governor's economic development programs, such as the Tesla plant up in Buffalo is a very popular example, right? Where Tesla basically got $1 billion to build this factory in exchange for creating about 1,500 jobs. And they keep on asking for an extension of the deadline to meet their target number for jobs, because it's very clear at this point that they haven't created nearly as many jobs as they were supposed to. So we've seen that play out again and again. There are different types of programs that do produce that just are a better investment for communities, like job training programs do a lot better, or in some cases like brownfield redevelopment, that type of thing. But cases where you're giving billions of dollars away to large companies usually doesn't end up having a good ROI.
That was going to be my question about Tesla, here in Buffalo, where I am, Tonawanda, because they did get like $1 billion. They keep promising jobs. They keep not being very successful, and they keep asking for an extension, and they always get it. Does that mean that there's infusion of more cash, or do they just have that $1 billion and they just kind of keep milking it along? Do you know how that would work?
Yeah, as far as I know, it's just an extension of the deadline without a greater infusion of cash. Sometimes companies can ask to renegotiate the contract, and the state will concede that, or the local government will concede it, and then they will get extra money. In this case, I haven't seen that. But one thing is that Empire State Development does have to decide if they, at some point, they decline to extend Tesla's contract. They would have to decide whether or not to penalize Tesla about $40 million, I think, which they probably don't want to do.
Okay,
Thanks.
thanks.
Sonia.
Tom, are there any national think tanks around the country who monitor state governments on things like our state not having a database on this kind of information?
That's a good question. And the best organization is Good Jobs First. They have a national subsidy tracker that especially tracks a lot of the subsidies that Amazon has received across the state. Long Island has built a lot of last mile warehouses that, and shipment centers that will get products out to customers. And they've received millions, in some cases, hundreds of millions of dollars for those. So I'll drop a link to that as well.
This is an important issue. We're spending billions of dollars, and if this was working, they would surely be bragging about it, and they brag about it, but without any proof or any numbers. And it's just important for the public to have access to this information. So I'm glad you're doing this project. Alberta, you have a question.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Paul. So let me see if I understand what you're saying, Tom. So here in New York State, you are about the only agency that's looking into this deals that are being made. And you've only been doing that since about 2015. Am I understanding that right?
Well, just to clarify, so we're a nonprofit organization. We're not a government agency of any type, but we've been advocating for a database for 2015. We've been working in this area of just business subsidies and transparency going back to 2010 when our organization was founded.
So, okay, so 10 years back, you've been active. Now, and so far, no real progress. What has just happened is not really anything. Now, you also have said that other states, Texas, Florida, already have the database of deals. Is that correct? So my question is, what's going on with New York State that there's such lack of information and transparency? Do you have any idea or opinion?
Well, that's something we're trying to find out, of course. You know, I don't want to speak without evidence to, you know, why exactly there's been such a lack of transparency. One thing that I'm sure you all know is that it's hard to get transparency that happened in the first place. And then once you get it, it can be hard to keep it, right? So it's a long struggle. You know, as far as reasons why the state has been hesitant, I mean, the most cynical reason that I can think of is that they don't want taxpayers to see the numbers, right? But,
Sure.
you know, of course, I can't say for sure if that's the reason. All I can really say is that we know these programs usually don't work very well, and the state isn't really letting us find out whether or not that's true.
Well, thank you for that. It's curious that other states have had success with this database of deals and what their secret is. Curious. But thank you for the work you do. I as a citizen, I just applaud you in your organization.
Thanks.
Perfect.
All right. Well, I thank you, Tom, for taking the time to come tonight. And we're certainly looking forward to working with you and supporting this effort any way that we can. I don't think we've done a letter or anything in support of. So if there's stuff coming out in the future, you know, we'll certainly sign on and, you know, let me know. So let me move on to the next item. And Tom, you can either hang out with us, or if you have to go, I understand, up to you. So
yeah,
next
I'll drop
item,
some of these items into the chat, and then I'll probably head out. But thank you. I definitely appreciate being able to be here. Thank you.
thanks. Next item is number 7 on our agenda. It's pages 6 through 10 of the packet I emailed. I mentioned at the last meeting, we submitted our first grant requests. Although we are became a 501c3 about a year ago, we have not submitted any grant requests. So I did submit a request to the Oshai Foundation, which is a local foundation in Buffalo, to try to get money for a new website. And it was a small request of, I got 2 proposals, cost estimates, and in the packet is what I liked about the Oshai Foundation is literally, I had to submit just a half-page description of what I was looking for, and I included that. And I said, well, this is pretty simple. And we got 2 cost estimates. One company said $5,000 for a new website. One said $2,700. So I said to the foundation, we would gladly accept $2,700 to help us create this website. I did, after I sent out the meeting agenda, got a response that our request was unfortunately rejected. They cited, due to COVID, that they were refocusing on where their money was going. The irony being, of course, that, you know, governments are becoming less transparent, using COVID as an excuse as well. So I submitted a similar request to the Knight Foundation, KNIGHT. They fund a lot of open government organizations, and they too had a very simple 1-page form to fill out. So I sent that in. They acknowledged receiving it. And if they are interested, they will let me know in a week or 2, I guess, whether they want more information or not. So we'll see, wait to see if we hear from them. In the meantime, we're close to having enough money in our account in any event to pay for the website, but I certainly don't want to completely drain our account. So I've also sending out some fundraising letters to attorneys. In the past, we had one law firm donate $300 a couple years ago to our efforts. I sent them a letter asking for $500.
You put a number on it.
I did. I said, or any other amount that you were willing. So I got a list together of, I took a look at the biggest charitable contributors in the area. You can find these lists around. It's predominantly lawyers and doctors. So I'm focusing on lawyers, just being a fellow attorney. Some of them I know, some of them I don't know. And we'll see if we can get some additional funds to maybe make this website thing happen. I prefer to get it done through a grant, so I'll wait to see what the Knight Foundation says. So that's the latest on that effort. Any questions on that? Otherwise, we will open it up to new business. Does anybody have anything under new business that they want to bring up?
I have a little question,
Sure.
Paul.
Yep, go ahead.
In the interest of transparency and open meetings, as you indicated in the beginning of the meeting, some, which annoys me, but some places won't let you speak, some places will let you speak. I guess my question is, if a town board meeting, for example, always lets everybody speak and they go on for ad nauseum for an hour or 2 hours, then all of a sudden they decide that it's going to only be 5 minutes, but certain people can talk for half an hour if they like you, and if you don't like you, you only get 5 minutes. And the change was done, I guess, during COVID. Is there a mechanism where you can say, hey, wait a minute, you can't just, like, can they just change it without putting it on the agenda for the next meeting for people to discuss it? Like, West Seneca might let you speak for 10 minutes all the time for years, and maybe East Aurora won't, and maybe the Niagara County or whatever says, well, it depends. Do they have to post that they're going to change the format? I guess is the question for anybody who has the answer for me.
I mean, they can do whatever they want. I mean, usually if you have a procedure in place, somebody will make a motion and put it on the agenda, but they don't have to. Again, there's nothing in the law that requires that they have to hear from anybody.
So if you can't say that it's been past practice for years, you guys have let everybody speak, and now all of a sudden here comes Mr. Paul Wolf, and maybe you're not inclined to listen to him, and they can just tell you, too bad, sit down.
It's certainly a good argument to make, and most elected officials are afraid to change that past practice. So it's pretty rare, but it can happen. I mean, they know they're going to get heat for it. In fact, one of the things I just saw today, there's a small town outside of Albany. I think it's Pillmont. I've never heard of it before. Small
Coal mines?
Pillmont, I think.
Pillmont.
A small town of like 1,300 people. Might be a village, actually. And during COVID, they've been live streaming their meetings and posting the recordings online. But now that they've returned to in-person meetings, the mayor said, we're not going to do the Zoom anymore. And some of the board members said, well, why not? It's a great way for people to see what's going on. And the mayor said, well, I prefer to conduct business in person. And if it's that important, you should come here. And people said, well, why can't we do both? I mean, again, why can't you have an in-person meeting? And for those who can't make it, it's live streamed and it's recorded and posted online if you can watch whenever. And they voted against it 3-2 to continue Zooming and video recording their meetings. So I was going to prepare a letter to send to them expressing our opposition to them eliminating it. But one of the things that we support, I think one of the good things that's come out of COVID is Zoom meetings. And I don't know why, as things go back to normal, you can't continue to do both.
Right, I agree.
And there is legislation that's been introduced in Albany to mandate live streaming and video recording, but it hasn't made any progress yet, but hopefully it will.
Do you know what the number is, Paul? Or what's it called?
The bill number is in the assembly 06640. And in the Senate, 00539. So I was gonna put together a memo to send out to all the legislators saying that we support that.
Thank you. I guess I just feel like it's important that it's just not arbitrarily changed because someone doesn't happen to like your opinion, because it's just, it's like whether the censorship is overt or covert, it just is worrisome to me. To just decide tomorrow that, we're not going to let Mr. Paul Wolf speak, but we're going to let his neighbor speak. And if you're talking about a subject that maybe is favorable, but another subject that might be more controversial, it just doesn't sit right with me. But thank you.
It's a regular thing in North Tonawanda, right, Joe?
Obviously, it's encroaching in the town of Tonawanda.
Regular.
Yeah.
In fact, one person got up and said, "Hey, shut her up." And they then had a timer, and a person would be talking, one of their friends, they let the person speak for 15 minutes. Sonia gets up. Sonia, you got 1 minute left. And you know what was so good and funny is people saw the evidence, just what you're talking about. Hey, they know this person. They're letting him speak 15 minutes. She can't speak no more than 5 minutes. And at 3-4 minutes, you're saying, Sonia, you got 1 minute left. Sit down. That's like, we've got to change the fact that they work for us. We're not their slaves. They are to give us service, not that we're their slaves. Problem is, and I may sound unpatriotic, but you know what? People are not taking an interest. They're not practicing their citizenship. And you know what? It's not only the people who serve us, but it's we citizens who are sleeping at the wheel. We're a good part of the problem, and we need to get off our duffs, turn our brains on, and take an interest.
All right, we got Sonia wound up now.
She hit on a sore subject. Transparency, so basic.
Anybody else under new business? I see Tina Carney joining us. We've emailed each other. I think this is the first time you've attended a meeting, so perhaps you can say hello, tell us a little bit about yourself and what part of the state you're from.
Thank you. I appreciate it, Paul. It's good to see you for the first time.
Yeah.
I'm zooming to you from Tri-Li, New York, so just outside of Rochester. My family and I have lived here for 7 years. My husband and I grew up in Wyoming County, so Attica, and my husband from Darien, but we lived in Chicago for 10 years prior to living in Chicago for a little while. So we've been around a little bit. I have taken an interest in open government because I have been participating more in my school board meetings, and because my oldest son is dyslexic, so I have become an advocate for that around the state, and I've found other parents around the state that are working on that too. I've also been interested in county legislative meetings in terms of education, as well as early intervention. And then my third area of interest is meaningful family engagement, which is essentially like a civic engagement, like you were talking about, Sonia, a little bit. And I think I've had a hard time figuring out the process. We don't know what we don't know. We don't know how to necessarily engage in these things. So I'm curious to know if this group would consider maybe presenting almost like a citizens academy type of series. I have learned a lot just by going to meetings, and just this past week on Tuesday at our Board of Education meeting, there was a bit of a conflict that came up because there were parents and citizens who were there and riled up and upset because school is still not open for 5 days and they don't feel heard. And they're upset, and they didn't understand the process of the meeting. And someone spoke out when a board member was giving a report, and there was shouting, there was conflict. A police officer was there, and it just escalated because the people there didn't realize that there's a specific points in the meeting where you can speak and where you can't speak. So I think it's just this unnecessary. I think we don't know all the rules. We don't know how to play the game. So how can we inform? I think an informed and engaged society is a thriving one. So how can we inform more people about these processes? So then they know maybe where to go to or who to go to when they need to know because most of the time we don't go and talk until there's a problem, until we have to. So I'm trying to educate people as I go to try to keep those emotions down, but it's been challenging. And I was trying to get my school board to record board meetings, and I asked, and I said, this would be great, especially since the pandemic. Why are we meeting in person? This isn't safe. Well, we'll think about it. I was like, all right, great. I'll come and I'll record it and I'll share it to parents I know. And they're like, you can't do that. And I went and talked to the reporter in Rochester, and he goes, Tina, that's not true. That's not true. So he emailed them, and all of a sudden they're like, oh, yep, we're going to go ahead and get that YouTube. We got to get our board room all retrofitted up and get that taken care of. And they did, but the broadcast is very poor. And it's hard to hear and it's hard to see. So it's been a battle, and I have not made friends. So it's, I don't know. Thanks for having me. Those were some words. Love to hear what anybody else thinks about any of that.
Well, I appreciate your efforts, and I know on our Facebook page that you frequently share our Facebook posts, and I've gotten quite a few people, I think, following our page because of your sharing our posts. So I appreciate that. You seem to be really out there networking in a lot of ways. But you make a good point about training people. We've done some training sessions on the open meetings law and the freedom of information law, but maybe we even need to get more basic than that, like you say, as to, how a meeting is run and, how the whole thing works. Because even myself, when I show up at meetings, and I'm pretty experienced at this, but a lot of times it doesn't state on their agenda when and where you as a citizen can speak. And, they're not very good at, informing people about a lot of things. So that's a good point. And I'll have to give that some thought and see what we could put together to do something along those lines. Alberta.
So Tina, in your request for what we think, so I think you're marvelous to be an advocate and for kind of taking the bull by the horns, as they say. And you've inspired me to look into my own Board of Education here in North Tonawanda. It doesn't seem like a very labor intensive thing to post on your screen or your website what the rules of your meeting is. It seems like a simple customer service kind of minute thing. It doesn't seem like a really big thing to me. So I will ask that question. Thank you.
I mean, I've had boards say to me, well, you could speak at any time in our meeting. I said, well, how would I know that? Where does it say that on your agenda? And you got to have a lot of courage just to pipe up at any point during a meeting, and if you don't see anybody else doing it, how do you know you even can do it? You say people can speak at any point during your meeting, but at the last 4 meetings I've seen, no one said a word. You don't even, announce it or make people aware of it. So
they don't make you feel welcome, Paul.
Oh, believe me, I know. If looks could kill, when I've walked into some of these boardrooms.
I could imagine. I'd like.
I think the question too is that, I think you're right, Paul, because the first time I started asking questions, first they get angry, then they think you're just pesky. And then they would say things like, nobody ever asked these questions before. And then you say something, well, can I get a copy of X, Y, and Z? Well, we don't do stuff like that. And it's like, some of it, I think, being charitable, they just don't do stuff. And it's like, if you want a copy of your tax bill or water bill, they might have it. But any other kind of stuff, it's like, well, we don't know. It might be here someplace, but we just don't know where it is or whether you can have it. And a couple of times I asked for things and they told me it was 25 cents. So I said, okay. And they're like, no one's ever paid us. So give me back my money.
Anything else under new business? Sonia.
Tina, Paul, just to follow up, Tina, what you said, I thought many years ago, we need to have an ombudsman. I think in the 70s, I heard that word, and somebody to help us how to do things. And I'm just reminded by your comments, I need to call my Department of State and mention to them, we're having comments, and I hear from people, they feel intimidated. They don't know how it works and when you go to a common council meeting. And my thinking is, I remember many years ago when I spoke to a state planner, and he said to me, when the immigrants were first coming over here and to be citizens, the federal government told them the things as a citizen, what you do, and to help them. That's very basic. And like you said, Paul, I think we have to go to the basics. That would be a beginning, because we're a little more advanced. Let's show people, here's what our forefathers said. When you're a citizen, here's what you do. What do they have to provide? We elect them and they serve us. They are our constituents, and somebody's got to take care of the business and the community, the government, and we vote for them. And that's how it works. But you've got to give them input and let people get a feel. And I think when they have a grounding, a foundation of how it works, they might take an interest. And I know, like I said, Paul, they don't make you feel welcome when you come. They're uptight. You could feel the tension, and sometimes more tension than ever. But Tina, you make a very good point, and bravo to you for your work.
All right. Well, before we wrap up, it says on my screen, Dad. I don't know if that's my father on the phone from Florida, or who is that?
It's Jerry. I came on late. I didn't want to interrupt.
It's not my dad, but I don't know who's dad.
It's a generic dad. My kids gave me this new laptop for Christmas, and they put Dad on, and I just left it.
I wasn't sure if it was my father, who recently became a paid member.
Jerry from North Buffalo, just enjoying the conversation.
All right, Jerry, you want to introduce yourself or say anything?
No, just Jerry first. I live in North Buffalo with my wife. We've been here for over 30 years, and we're trying to, think globally and act locally. So as much as I can, I'm just trying to learn.
Great. I remember we've emailed each other as well.
Right. We did some time ago.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Thank you. Thanks for the invite.
Sure. All right. Well, we try not to drag our meetings out. Originally, my goal was to keep the meetings under an hour, but now that we've been having guest speakers, we go a little over that, but not too much. So our next meeting would be June 10th at 6:30, again by Zoom, and I'll send out all the information. Unless anyone has anything else they want to bring up, we'll do a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
All right. Motion by Maria, second by Alberta. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. All right. So we hope to see you all June 10th, and I will be sending you out more emails as stuff comes up. And great to see you, meet some people tonight, and see you next time.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.